The Indiana Fever just shattered the WNBA record with 41 nationally televised games this season, and it's causing an absolute uproar. The old guard of WNBA media personalities aren't holding back their frustration. As Caitlin Clark's team dominates the airwaves, their complaints are getting louder by the day, but behind this controversy lies a fascinating story about viewership, growth, and the future of women's basketball. Today, we're exposing the real reasons behind this media meltdown. The old WNBA media. And again, this is not something that I think is that surprising, but it's genuinely the argument, and it's every single person I'm seeing making this argument is either a injury stan, and that's nothing should be taken for that, stan culture stans of anyone are gonna be inherently a little bit crazy, but you're seeing the old WNBA fans complaining that they have more. Now just start with the facts that have the old WNBA media in an absolute frenzy. The Indiana Fever, led by rookie sensation Caitlin Clark, will be featured on national television a record-breaking 41 times this season. To put that in perspective, that's more than the last two WNBA champions combined. And you better believe that's ruffling some feathers. What we're witnessing is nothing short of a media civil war. On one side, you have the established WNBA voices who've been covering the league for years, if not decades. On the other side, you have new fans, new media, and networks that simply can't ignore the viewership numbers that follow Caitlin Clark wherever she goes. The complaints from the old guard are loud and constant. The WNBA is forcing the Fever down everyone's throats. This isn't fair to other teams who've been successful for years. They're only getting airtime because of one player. But let's be real, these arguments completely miss what's actually happening here. I'm going to be honest here. The Aces, I think if I'm not mistaken, the Aces had 2 games at over 1 million viewers last year. One was against the Fever. I think the Liberty, if I'm not mistaken, it was only Liberty and Aces. And then Liberty versus Fever. And this was Caitlin Clark's Indiana Fever team's viewership on ION. They had 7 games with more than 1 million viewers on ION. Let's talk numbers, because they don't lie. Last season, when Caitlin Clark joined the Indiana Fever as a rookie, something extraordinary happened. The Fever had 7 games with more than 1 million viewers on ION. 7. For context, the championship-winning Las Vegas Aces had just 2 games that reached the million-viewer mark all season, and one of those was against, you guessed it, the Fever. What's even more remarkable is that ION isn't exactly a household name in sports broadcasting. It's not ESPN or ABC. Yet Clark's presence alone was enough to draw massive audiences to a network many sports fans wouldn't normally tune into. When Clark did play on major networks like ESPN, viewership sometimes exceeded 2 million. Those are numbers that make television executives sit up and take notice. Caitlin Clark draws in 1 million viewers to ION. And not only that, the Fever are gonna be good. And it wasn't just a brief curiosity factor that faded as the season progressed. In fact, the opposite happened. As Clark grew more comfortable in the professional game, as she started hitting those deep threes and making those highlight reel passes, viewership actually increased. The games in August and September drew even bigger numbers than early season matchups. Remember that game against the Washington Mystics, where Clark hit 5 consecutive three-pointers en route to a 30-point performance? That was when viewership really started to take off. By the time she was facing teams like the Mercury and Liberty again later in the season, Clark had already beaten them once and established herself as a legitimate WNBA star. Fans weren't just watching to see a novelty, they were watching to see a player who was changing the game. What's particularly interesting about the viewership spike is that it coincided with Clark's development as a pro. As she got better, more people tuned in. By the time she recorded her historic triple-double, becoming the only rookie in WNBA history to accomplish that feat, fans were flocking to screens in record numbers. It's worth noting that despite her incredible performances, Clark was often overlooked for weekly and monthly honors. During the week she recorded that historic triple-double, the league instead celebrated a double-double record and gave the honor to Angel Reese. The following week they gave it to Sabrina Ionescu, while literally using Clark's highlight tape in the announcement. It was almost as if the league itself was struggling to adapt to this new phenomenon. The most stunning revelation in all this is that even if Clark were to miss games due to injury, the Fever would still likely be the most watched team in the WNBA. That's because people aren't just tuning in for a few highlight plays, they're watching entire Fever games and then staying to watch other teams play afterward. They're becoming fans of the game itself. This completely dismantles one of the most ridiculous arguments from the old WNBA media, that people are only watching Clark for reasons that have nothing to do with basketball. The idea that millions of viewers would sit through entire professional basketball games for any reason other than enjoying the sport is absurd. People don't invest hours of their time in something they don't enjoy. Television networks aren't charities. They're businesses that make decisions based on what viewers want to watch. When ION puts the Fever on TV and gets 1 million viewers, when ESPN features them and gets 2 million, that's not favoritism. Networks pay enormous sums for broadcast rights, and they need to see returns on those investments. Here's a perfect analogy. In English football, when Leeds United is in the Championship, the second division, they might have 35 of their 46 games televised nationally, while other teams in the same league might only have 5 games all year on TV. Why? Because Leeds draws viewers, and viewers equal revenue, yet all teams in the league get an equal share of the television money. Everyone benefits. And this is where the short-sightedness of the old WNBA media becomes truly baffling. The WNBA's current television deal expires in 2 years. When the league sits down to negotiate the next one, what do you think will determine how much money they can command? Viewership numbers. The more people watch the WNBA now, the more lucrative that next deal will be, and the more money the league makes from television, the more the players make. The old WNBA media seem to want money to magically appear without growing the game. They want higher salaries without higher viewership. They want more coverage without acknowledging that networks will only cover what people actually watch. It's an utterly unrealistic position that ignores the basic economics of sports business. What's happening with the Fever is exactly what the WNBA needs: more eyes on the product, more casual fans turning into dedicated viewers, more national conversation about women's basketball, and yes, more controversy and debate, because controversy drives interest too. The numbers don't just suggest that the Fever should be on national television 41 times, they practically demand it. Consider this: if even just 10% of the new viewers who tune in for Clark and the Fever become regular WNBA fans, that's still a larger group than the entire pre-existing fan base. This is how growth happens. Unlike last season, the WNBA appears to finally understand what they have in Clark and the Fever. They're leveraging that popularity to boost the entire league, which is the only path to long-term success. There's no value in TV equality if it means putting games that draw 200,000 viewers in primetime slots over ones that draw 2 million. Let's be brutally honest about the product. Not all WNBA basketball is equally entertaining to watch, especially for casual fans. Some teams play styles that new viewers will find difficult to enjoy. Others, like the Fever, play a brand of basketball that's inherently more accessible and exciting, pushing the pace, shooting from deep, making highlight reel passes, and generally creating the kind of moments that end up on social media and draw more eyes to the sport. Would you rather watch a Saturday night primetime game featuring the Connecticut Sun against the Atlanta Dream, where possessions might involve multiple post-ups in congested space and limited transition opportunities? Or would you prefer watching the Indiana Fever, where Clark might pull up from 30 feet at any moment, throw a no-look pass to Aaliyah Boston in the post, or launch a quarterback-style outlet to Kelsey Mitchell streaking down the court? The answer is obvious for most viewers, especially those who aren't already die-hard WNBA fans, and bringing in those new viewers is essential for the league's future. That's not to say there aren't other entertaining teams in the WNBA. The Minnesota Lynx play beautiful basketball, with excellent ball movement that basketball purists appreciate. The New York Liberty are dynamic and skilled. The Dallas Wings can be thrilling with their athletic style. But the Fever have that special combination of star power and entertaining play that's particularly effective at drawing in casual viewers and converting them to fans. By contrast, teams like the Las Vegas Aces, despite their championship pedigree, often played a style last season that lacked the fluidity and excitement that new fans crave. Their offensive approach frequently devolved into isolation basketball, your turn, my turn between their stars. Ja Wilson would get the ball and shoot. Kelsey Plum would get the ball and shoot. Jackie Young would shoot if given any space at all. It wasn't always the most compelling brand of basketball for attracting new viewers. The reality is that the Indiana Fever have become must-see TV. It's virtually impossible for a casual fan to watch them play and not be entertained. The only exception might be when opponents deliberately slow the game down to neutralize the Fever's pace and excitement. A legitimate strategy for winning, but not one that helps grow the audience. This season's opening games promise to be particularly exciting. The Chicago Sky won't be able to drag the Fever down to a slow grinding pace in Game 1. The matchup with the Dallas Wings should be electric. These are the kinds of games that create new fans, and that's exactly what the WNBA needs more than anything else right now. What's most frustrating about the old WNBA media's reaction is their apparent inability to see the bigger picture. They claim to want growth for the league, yet they're actively complaining about the very thing that's driving that growth. They want higher salaries for players but resist the market forces that would make those salaries possible. They want more coverage but criticize the networks for covering what people actually want to watch. The irony is rich. Many of these same voices have spent years advocating for more attention and resources for the WNBA. Now that attention is arriving in unprecedented waves, but because it's centered around a player and team they didn't predict or promote, they're crying foul. What we're really seeing is resistance to change. The old guard is uncomfortable with the shifting landscape. New voices are emerging in WNBA media. New fans are discovering the league, and the power centers are changing. That's threatening to those who've held influence for years, but change is inevitable in sports. As it is in all things, stars emerge, new teams rise, audiences shift. The smart move is to embrace these changes and find ways to leverage them for the benefit of the entire league. The foolish move is to resist them and cling to an imagined past where fairness meant equal TV time regardless of viewer interest. The truth is that Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever represent an unprecedented opportunity for the WNBA. The league has never had a player who generated this level of mainstream interest. They've never had regular season games drawing these kinds of viewership numbers. This is the moment to capitalize, to use Clark's star power to introduce millions of new fans to the quality and excitement of women's professional basketball. And it's working. We're seeing arenas filled to capacity not just for Fever games, but for other WNBA matchups as well. We're seeing social media engagement at all-time highs. We're seeing corporate sponsors taking increased interest in the league. All of these developments translate directly to more money, more resources, and a brighter future for the entire WNBA. Imagine if the Atlanta Dream filled their 16,000-seat arena for games against the Fever, and those fans have such a great experience that they come back for other games. Suddenly their usual 3,500-seat venue sells out regularly. That creates demand for more games in the larger arena, and eventually they could be playing their entire season in the bigger venue. That's how growth happens. One fan at a time, one game at a time. The trajectory of the WNBA is undeniably upward. Television ratings are climbing, attendance is increasing, social media engagement is exploding, corporate partnerships are expanding. These are all positive developments that benefit everyone associated with the league, players, coaches, executives, and yes, media members too. So instead of complaining about the Fever's television dominance, the old WNBA media should be celebrating it. They should be using this moment to highlight all the amazing talent throughout the league. They should be welcoming new fans with open arms, not questioning their motives or authenticity. They should be part of the solution, not part of the problem, because at the end of the day, a rising tide lifts all boats. More eyes on the Indiana Fever means more eyes on their opponents. More discussion about Caitlin Clark, means more discussion about the players who compete against her. More national TV games for the Fever means more exposure for the entire WNBA. The old WNBA media's fury is not just misplaced, it's counterproductive. Their complaints won't change the television schedule. They won't alter the viewership patterns. They won't convince networks to feature less popular teams in primetime slots. All they'll accomplish is to create division within a fan community that should be united in support of women's basketball. The smart approach is to embrace this moment, to recognize it as the opportunity it truly is. The WNBA has a chance to break through to the mainstream in a way it never has before. It has a chance to build a larger, more diverse, more passionate fan base. It has a chance to secure a television deal that could transform the financial landscape for everyone involved. That's the big picture that the old WNBA media are missing. They're so focused on perceived slights and departures from tradition that they can't see the forest for the trees. They're clinging to an old model that wasn't working well enough, while resisting a new one that shows tremendous promise. The reality couldn't be clearer. Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever are bringing unprecedented attention to women's basketball. This isn't something to fight against, it's something to celebrate and capitalize on. Instead of dividing the fan base with needless controversy, let's focus on what matters: growing the game, supporting these incredible athletes, and building a sustainable future for women's basketball.